A young woman in a red dress stands outside her boyfriend's penthouse, ready for the night she planned to give him her heart. But what she hears through the cracked door transforms her into someone else entirely. A cruel bet, lies about her father. And one dangerous truth. The most powerful man in the city, her betrayer's father, is the one who saved her dad's life. She doesn't cry. She doesn't beg. She walks straight into Victor Cole's private office and changes everything. Follow this story to the end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. D. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime that felt too delicate for what Evelyn Harper was about to do. She stepped into the marble hallway of the penthouse floor, the click of her heels swallowed by thick carpet that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. The red dress she'd chosen clung to her in all the ways the magazine articles promised would drive a man wild. She'd spent 2 months' worth of tips on it. Worth it, she'd told herself. Tonight was the night she'd finally tell Ryan she loved him. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door. Not locked. Ryan always left it open when he knew she was coming. Sweet, she'd thought once. Trusting. The penthouse spread before her in shadows and ambient light from the city beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. She could hear voices from the study. Ryan's deep laugh, another man's voice she didn't recognize, and then a woman's giggle that made her stomach clench. Evelyn froze. The study door stood half open, light spilling into the hallway. "I still can't believe you've kept this going for 8 months," the unfamiliar male voice said. "That's dedication, man." Ryan's laugh came again, casual and comfortable. "It's not that hard. Look, Evelyn's sweet, a little naive. She actually thinks I'm some kind of romantic." The woman laughed. "Does she know about us?" "About you? No. About any of it. Not a clue." Evelyn's vision narrowed. She should leave. She should turn around, get back in that elevator, and pretend she'd never heard any of this. Instead, her feet carried her closer to the door, her body pressing against the wall just outside the frame of light. "The bet was just until you got her into bed, wasn't it?" the man asked. "You passed that finish line months ago." "Yeah, but then it got interesting." Ryan's voice held a smile. "My father offered to cover her dad's medical bills if I kept her around. Said he wanted to see how long I could maintain the charade. You know how he is. Everything's a test." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Evelyn's feet. Her father. The cancer treatment. The bills that had stopped coming 6 months ago, right when the hospital told her an anonymous benefactor had covered everything. She'd cried with relief. She'd thanked Ryan for being there through it all, for holding her when she broke down, for promising everything would be okay. "Victor's twisted," the woman said, "but at least he pays well." "He does," Ryan agreed. "And honestly, playing the devoted boyfriend isn't the worst job. She's grateful, she's accommodating, and she doesn't ask too many questions. Perfect practice for when I actually need to settle down with someone who matters." Something inside Evelyn's chest cracked. Not her heart. That felt too small for what was breaking. Something larger. Something that had been holding her together in a shape she'd been taught to maintain. "You think she actually believes you love her?" the man asked. "I think she believes what she wants to believe," Ryan said. "Same as everyone. People see what makes them comfortable." "That's dark, bro." "That's realistic." Ryan's voice hardened slightly. "Look, my father taught me early. There are people who have power, and people who get used by people with power. Evelyn's the second kind. Sweet girl, hard worker, probably would have made someone a decent wife someday, but she's not built for this world." "And Melissa is?" The woman's voice turned sharp. "Melissa understands transactions," Ryan said smoothly. "She knows this is fun, not forever. That's why it works." The woman, Melissa, laughed. "You're such a bastard." "You like it." The sound of kissing. Evelyn pressed her hand against her mouth, trapping the sound that wanted to escape. Not a sob, something uglier, something that tasted like blood and fury and 8 months of carefully constructed lies. She looked down at the red dress, the dress she'd bought to feel beautiful, to feel worthy, to feel like someone a man like Ryan Cole could actually love. What a stupid small thing to want. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from her father. "Feeling good today. Doctor says numbers are improving. Whatever angel paid for this treatment, I thank them every day. Love you, sweetheart." An angel. Victor Cole. Ryan's father. The man she'd met exactly twice, once at a charity gala Ryan had dragged her to, once when he'd shown up at the penthouse unannounced and studied her like she was a specimen under glass. Both times she'd felt like he could see through her skin to something she didn't know she was hiding. Both times she'd left feeling displaced, like she'd been moved 3 inches to the left of where she thought she was standing. Now she understood why. Evelyn backed away from the door. Her heels made no sound on the carpet. Neither did the tears that finally came, hot and silent, tracking mascara down her cheeks. She turned toward the elevator, then stopped. No, not the elevator. The penthouse had 2 wings. Ryan's study sat in the east wing, all glass and modern art and furniture that looked expensive but uncomfortable. She'd always felt wrong there, like she might break something just by breathing too hard. She'd only been in the west wing once, Victor's private office. Ryan had pulled her away within seconds, muttering something about his father's space being off limits. Evelyn walked toward it now. The door was solid mahogany, dark and heavy. Locked, she assumed. But when she turned the handle, it opened smoothly, soundlessly. The room beyond was nothing like Ryan's study. Wood paneling, leather furniture, bookshelves, floor to ceiling. A massive desk sat near the windows, papers arranged in precise stacks. Everything about the space breathed control. Power. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. And sitting behind the desk, reading something on a tablet with the kind of focus that made the rest of the world irrelevant, was Victor Cole. He looked up as she entered. No surprise crossed his face. No concern. Just a slight lift of one eyebrow, as if her presence was mildly interesting but ultimately expected. "Miss Harper," he said. His voice was nothing like Ryan's. Deeper, quieter, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to command attention. "That's a very red dress." Evelyn closed the door behind her. Her hands had stopped shaking. Something cold had settled into her chest where the breaking thing had been. "You paid for my father's treatment." "I did." "Why?" Victor set down the tablet. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same intensity he had at the gala. Gray eyes that missed nothing. A face too hard to be handsome, too intelligent to be dismissed. He wore a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, no tie. Even in casual clothes, he looked like he owned everything in a 5-mile radius. He probably did. "Your father had stage 3 lymphoma," Victor said. "The treatment he needed cost approximately $400,000. You were working double shifts at a restaurant and selling your art on the weekends. By my calculations, you would have managed to save enough to cover roughly 8% of the cost before he died." The bluntness hit like a fist. Evelyn's breath caught. "I don't like waste," Victor continued. "Your father is a research chemist. Before his diagnosis, he was close to a breakthrough in polymer applications that could have significant industrial value. Keeping him alive serves my interests. The fact that it also served yours was incidental." "Incidental?" Evelyn repeated. The word felt sharp in her mouth. "Yes." "And your son? Was he incidental too?" Something flickered in Victor's expression. Not quite a smile. "You've been listening at doors. I came to see my boyfriend and heard him laughing about the bet he made to sleep with me. I heard him kissing another woman. I heard him tell his friends I don't matter." Her voice stayed level, flat. She barely recognized it. "So yes, I listened at a door. And now I'm here. Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Evelyn didn't have a good answer. Or maybe she had too many answers, all of them tangled up with fury and humiliation and something else she couldn't name yet. "To say thank you," she said finally. "For my father." "You could have sent a card." "You don't seem like a card person." Victor's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Not quite." "I'm not." Silence settled over the room. Outside the windows, the city glittered like broken glass scattered across black velvet. Evelyn wondered how many people down there were having the worst night of their lives right now. How many were standing in expensive dresses realizing they'd been played for fools. How many were stupid enough to walk into a wolf's den afterward. "Your mascara's running," Victor said. Evelyn touched her cheek. Her fingers came away black. She'd forgotten about crying. It felt like that had happened to someone else, in another lifetime. "I know. There's a bathroom through that door." He gestured to a panel in the wall she hadn't noticed. Unless you prefer the tragic heroine look. Do you always talk to people like this? Like what? Like you're cataloging their mistakes. Only when they're interesting mistakes. Victor stood. He was taller than Ryan, broader through the shoulders. He moved with the kind of precision that came from complete confidence in his own body. Most people's mistakes are boring, predictable. Yours are less so. Coming here was a mistake? Coming here in that dress with mascara running down your face to thank the man who saved your father's life while his son fucks another woman 50 feet away? Victor walked around the desk, stopping a few feet from her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. That's either a mistake or the smartest thing you've ever done. I haven't decided which yet. Evelyn's heart was hammering now. Not from fear, from something else. Something that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you could jump or you could step back, but you couldn't stay balanced forever. I should go, she said. Yes, you should. She didn't move. Neither did he. My son is not a good man, Victor said quietly. But you already knew that. You knew it before tonight, you just didn't want to see it. You don't know what I knew. I know you're smarter than you let yourself be. I know you worked 2 jobs to support your father and still find time to paint. I know you got a full scholarship to art school and turned it down to stay home when your mother died. I know you're 26 years old and you've spent your entire adult life making yourself smaller so other people feel comfortable. His eyes held hers. And I know that dress cost $800, which means you've been saving for months. Which means tonight meant something. Evelyn's throat tightened. How do you know any of that? I make it my business to know things. That's creepy. That's accurate. Victor tilted his head slightly. You came here for a reason, Miss Harper. It wasn't to say thank you, so what was it? The question cut through all the noise in her head, past the humiliation, past the anger, past the part of her that wanted to run back to her apartment and pretend this entire night never happened. What did she want? The truth rose up like bile. She wanted to hurt Ryan the way he'd hurt her. She wanted him to feel small and used and stupid. She wanted him to know what it was like to be someone's joke, someone's bet, someone's practice round for the real thing. But more than that, and this was the part that scared her, she wanted to stop being the kind of person people could do that to. I want to not be incidental anymore, she said. Victor's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them. That's a dangerous thing to want. Is it? In my world? Yes. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her think of smoke and leather. People who matter in my world don't get there by being nice. They get there by being ruthless, by taking what they want and destroying anything that gets in their way. They get there by becoming the kind of person who uses people like you used to be. Used to be? The woman who walked in here 5 minutes ago? She doesn't exist anymore. You can feel it, can't you? That crack in your chest. That's not your heart breaking. That's something older waking up, something that knows how to bite back. Evelyn's breath came shorter. He was right. She could feel it. That cold, sharp thing that had settled where her naivety used to live. What if I want to wake it up all the way? She asked. Victor smiled. It was not a kind smile. Then you should definitely go. Walk out of here, go home, cry it out, and forget you ever met my son. Find a nice man who'll treat you well and give you the quiet life you thought you wanted. Because the alternative? His hand came up, fingers brushing the curve of her jaw so lightly she might have imagined it. The alternative will ruin you for quiet things. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to give you an out. Last chance, Evelyn. After this, there's no going back to who you were. She should take it. She should walk out of this office, block Ryan's number, and rebuild her life into something simple and safe. Find a man who worked a normal job, lived in a normal apartment, and loved her in a normal, uncomplicated way. She should. But the thing inside her chest, the thing with teeth, wanted blood first. What would the alternative look like? She asked. Victor's hand dropped away. He walked back to his desk, picked up a crystal decanter, and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He held one out to her. It would look like you staying here tonight, not in Ryan's bed, in mine. The words hit like a slap. Evelyn's face went hot. Excuse me? You wanted to know what it would look like to matter in my world. That's step one. You choose me over him, deliberately, decisively, and everyone knows it. That's... Evelyn struggled for words. That's insane. It's strategic. Victor's voice stayed calm. Right now, you're the girl my son used and discarded. Tomorrow, you could be the woman who walked past him to get to me. Which version of that story do you prefer? The version where I'm not a chess piece in whatever sick game you're playing with your son. We're all chess pieces, Miss Harper. The only question is whether you're a pawn or a queen. He took a sip from his glass, watching her over the rim. And before you accuse me of using you, yes, I would be, but I'd compensate you fairly. Your father's treatment continues indefinitely. Your medical school debt, yes, I know about that too, disappears. You get an apartment in a building I own, a car, a salary. You become untouchable. In exchange for what? Sleeping with you? In exchange for staying with me. There's a difference. What happens behind closed doors is negotiable. What happens in public is not. In public, you're mine, completely. No exceptions, no halfway. Evelyn's head spun. This was crazy. This was manipulation on a scale she'd never imagined. This was wrong in so many ways she couldn't count them all. But the word lodged in her throat like a fishhook. But Ryan was still in that study, laughing, still kissing Melissa, still thinking Evelyn was too naive to figure it out, too weak to do anything about it, still seeing her as nothing. Why? She asked. Why me? If this is about hurting Ryan, you could do that 1,000 other ways. Victor set down his glass. You're right. I could. But those ways would be about him. This way is about you. I don't understand. I watched you at the gala 3 months ago. My son introduced you as his girlfriend, and you smiled like you'd won something. You spent the whole night trying to fit in, trying to be what you thought those people wanted. You laughed at jokes that weren't funny. You agreed with opinions you didn't hold. You made yourself pleasant and forgettable. He paused. Until someone insulted your father's work. Do you remember? Evelyn remembered. Some venture capitalist had called chemists glorified lab techs, useless without business minds to monetize their ideas. She'd smiled tightly and excused herself before she said something that would embarrass Ryan. You wanted to rip his throat out, Victor said. I saw it. For exactly 3 seconds you let the mask slip, and I saw who you actually are. Someone with teeth. Someone who could be dangerous if she stopped apologizing for taking up space. He leaned against the desk. That's why you. Because you're wasted on my son. And I don't like waste. The words settled into her bones. Someone who could be dangerous. Was that true? Or was it just another line, another manipulation, another man telling her who she could be if she just did what he wanted? Evelyn looked at the glass in her hand. She hadn't remembered taking it. The liquid inside caught the light, glowing like captured fire. If I say yes, she said slowly, I'm not doing it to hurt Ryan. No? I'm doing it because I want what you're offering. The protection, the stability, the chance to stop being afraid. She met Victor's eyes. And because part of me wants to know what it feels like to be chosen by someone who doesn't need me small. Honest, Victor said. Good. I can work with honest. I haven't said yes yet. But you're going to. It wasn't a question. Evelyn's hand tightened on the glass. She thought about her father, safe in his hospital bed because this man had decided his life had value. She thought about her apartment, the one with the broken heater, and the landlord who ignored her calls. She thought about double shifts and art school dreams, and every time she'd swallowed her pride to keep the peace. She thought about Ryan's laugh. She actually thinks I'm some kind of romantic. The thing in her chest opened its eyes. One night, she said. You said one night changes everything. What did you mean? Victor's smile was sharp enough to cut. I meant that if you walk into my bedroom right now, you won't walk out the same person. You'll have crossed a line, become complicit in something that can't be undone. And tomorrow, when Ryan finds out, when everyone finds out, you'll have to decide who you are in the aftermath. Victim or villain? Pawn, or queen? Those aren't the only options. In my world, they are. Evelyn drained the glass. The liquor burned going down, settling into her stomach like molten gold. Dutch courage, her her mother used to call it. Liquid bravery for people who needed permission to want dangerous things. She set the empty glass on Victor's desk. "Show me," she said. Victor straightened. For the first time since she'd walked in, something like surprise crossed his features. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hand cupped the back of her neck, thumb pressing against her pulse point. She could feel her heartbeat hammering against his skin. "Last chance," he said quietly. "After this, you're in, all the way. No takebacks, no regrets, no pretending it didn't happen. You'll be exactly what Ryan thinks you're not capable of being, ruthless enough to use his father against him." "I know." "Do you?" His grip tightened slightly, not painful, possessive. "Because once I have you, I don't let go. That's not a metaphor. That's not romantic posturing. I mean it literally. You'll belong to me in every way that matters, and I will destroy anyone who tries to take you back, including you if you try to leave." A smart woman would run. A sane woman would recognize this for the threat it was and get out while she still could. But Evelyn had spent 26 years being smart and sane and small. And where had it gotten her? Standing in a penthouse in an $800 dress while the man she loved laughed about using her. "Then I guess I'd better not try to leave," she said. Victor's eyes darkened. "Wrong answer." "What's the right one?" "The right answer is that you won't want to leave. Because I'm going to give you everything you didn't know you needed. Power, protection, a place in a world that doesn't make space for people like you unless someone like me decides you're worth it." His thumb traced her jawline. "And in return, you're going to give me your loyalty, your obedience, your complete and absolute trust that I know what's best for you." "That's not trust, that's ownership." "In my world, they're the same thing." Evelyn should be terrified. Some part of her was terrified. But a larger part, the part that had teeth, was intrigued, interested, already calculating what she could do with the kind of power Victor was offering, already becoming someone new. "Okay," she said. "Okay what?" "Okay, I'm yours. Completely. Absolutely. Starting now." She stepped closer until her body was almost touching his. "But fair warning, I'm a fast learner. And eventually, I'm going to figure out how to be dangerous without your help." Victor smiled. It was the most genuine expression she'd seen on his face. "I'm counting on it." He kissed her. Not gentle, not tender, not any of the ways Ryan used to kiss her, like she was breakable and precious and needed to be handled with care. Victor kissed her like she was a challenge he intended to win, like he was claiming territory, like he wanted to crawl inside her skin and rearrange everything until she fit the shape he needed. Evelyn kissed back with everything she had. All the rage, all the hurt, all the parts of herself she'd kept locked down because they were too sharp for polite company. She bit his lip hard enough to taste copper. When he growled and pulled her closer, she felt something in her chest sing. This was what power felt like. When they broke apart, she was breathing hard. So was he. "Bedroom," he said. "Now." She let him lead her through a door she hadn't noticed, into a room that was all dark wood and darker sheets. The bed was enormous. Everything in it was expensive and cold and perfect. Victor started unbuttoning his shirt. Evelyn's hands went to the zipper of her dress. "Stop," he said. She froze. "I want to remember you like this. Red dress, ruined makeup, looking at me like you're not sure if I'm going to save you or destroy you." He crossed to her, turning her to face the full-length mirror on the wall. He stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, his eyes meeting hers in the reflection. "Look at yourself." She looked. She saw a girl in a red dress that suddenly felt like war paint. Mascara streaked down her face like battle scars. Eyes that had cried an hour ago, but now burned with something cleaner, harder. "That's the last time you see her," Victor said quietly. "That girl who thought love was enough, who thought if she was sweet and patient and good, someone would choose her. She's gone after tonight, and you can never get her back. So look, remember who you used to be before I make you into something else." Evelyn stared at her reflection, at the girl who'd bought a dress to seduce a man who'd never loved her, who'd spent 8 months being someone's joke without knowing it. "Good," she said. "I hated her anyway. Victor's laugh was low and dark. Liar. But you will be. By morning, you'll hate her for being weak, for wasting time on my son, for not seeing what you were worth until someone had to show you. His hands moved to the zipper of her dress. He pulled it down slowly, the sound obscenely loud in the quiet room. The fabric pooled at her feet. Beautiful, he murmured. And mine. She turned in his arms. Yours, she agreed, but only because I'm choosing it. For now, that's enough. He lifted her. She wrapped her legs around his waist, and he carried her to the bed. The sheets were cold against her back. He followed her down, his weight pressing her into the mattress, and for a second, just a second, doubt flickered through her mind. This was insane. This was wrong. This was... His mouth found the curve of her throat, and thought vanished. There was only sensation, only the slide of skin against skin, the bite of his teeth, the way he touched her like he owned her and she was the most valuable thing in his possession. Only the moment when he pushed inside her and she gasped his name, not Ryan's, never Ryan's again. Only the feeling of becoming someone new with every breath, every touch, every moment that pulled her further from the girl in the red dress and closer to whatever dangerous thing she was turning into. When it was over, she lay tangled in sheets that cost more than her rent, staring at the ceiling while Victor's hand traced patterns on her ribs. No going back now, he said. I know. Regrets? Evelyn thought about Ryan, about the study down the hall, about Melissa and the bet and 8 months of lies. She thought about her father in his hospital bed, alive because this man had decided to save him. She thought about the apartment she'd go back to tomorrow, except she wouldn't, because she didn't live there anymore. She thought about the girl in the mirror, the one who was already gone. None, she said. It was the first lie she'd told him, but she suspected it wouldn't be the last. Victor seemed to know. He smiled against her shoulder. Good. Now sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come. How could it? Her entire life had just detonated. By morning, Ryan would know. Everyone would know. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, made a choice that couldn't be unmade. And the strangest part, the part that should terrify her, was that she didn't want to take it back. She'd spent her whole life being the kind of person things happened to. The girl whose mother died, the girl whose father got sick, the girl whose boyfriend lied. But tonight, she'd made something happen. She'd walked into a lion's den and chosen to stay. She'd looked at power and said, yes, I'll take that, even knowing the price. Maybe that made her reckless. Maybe it made her stupid. Maybe it made her exactly what Ryan had said, someone who believed what she wanted to believe. Or maybe, and this was the thought that finally let her drift towards sleep, maybe it made her something else entirely, something with teeth, something dangerous, something that would never ever be incidental again. Evelyn woke to sunlight cutting through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee she hadn't made. For a confused second, she thought she was still in her apartment, that last night had been some kind of fever dream brought on by stress and exhaustion. Then she felt the sheets, Egyptian cotton, thread count higher than her credit score, and remembered everything. Victor's side of the bed was empty, the sheets cool to the touch. He'd been gone for a while. She sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. Her red dress lay in a crumpled heap near the door, looking smaller and sadder in the morning light. Her phone sat on the nightstand, plugged into a charger she hadn't put there. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages, all from Ryan. She didn't open them. The bedroom door opened. Victor walked in wearing charcoal slacks and a white shirt, already dressed for whatever his version of a workday looked like. He carried a mug of coffee in one hand and what looked like a clothing bag in the other. You're awake, he said. Good. We have things to do. Evelyn's throat was dry. In the harsh light of morning, with her makeup smeared and her hair a mess, she felt exposed in a way she hadn't last night. Last night had been fury and impulse and the intoxicating rush of burning her old life down. This morning was consequences. What time is it? She asked. 9:30. I let you sleep. You'll need the energy. He set the coffee on the nightstand and hung the garment bag on the closet door. There's a bathroom through there. Everything you need should be in the cabinet. Shower, get dressed. We're leaving in an hour. Leaving for where? To handle the aftermath. Victor's expression gave nothing away. Did you think we'd hide in here forever? I don't know what I thought. That's obvious. He said it without cruelty, just statement of fact. Drink your coffee. I'll explain when you're ready to hear it. He left before she could respond. Evelyn stared at the closed door, then at the coffee, then at the garment bag. Her entire body felt strange, like she'd borrowed someone else's skin and hadn't quite figured out how to move in it yet. She made herself get up, made herself walk to the bathroom, which was all marble and chrome and probably cost more than her father's medical bills. Made herself look in the mirror. The girl staring back looked wrecked. Mascara smudged into shadows under her eyes, hair tangled, a mark on her neck where Victor's mouth had been, already darkening into a bruise. Evidence. She showered in water so hot it turned her skin pink, washed away the makeup, the sweat, the physical residue of last night. But the feeling stayed. That sense of having crossed a border into a country where she didn't speak the language yet. The cabinet held unopened toiletries, all high-end brands she'd never heard of. She used them mechanically. Lotion, deodorant, a toothbrush still in its package. Like Victor had known she'd be here. Like he'd prepared. That should bother her more than it did. She dried off with a towel that felt like clouds and opened the garment bag. Inside was a dress. Navy blue, designer label, probably worth more than her car. Underneath were matching shoes still in the box. Underwear with tags still attached, and exactly her size. Definitely prepared. Evelyn dressed slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she zipped the dress. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Victor didn't do things halfway. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found him in what appeared to be a study adjacent to his office. He was on the phone speaking in rapid-fire sentences about contracts and acquisitions and things she didn't understand. He glanced up when she entered, his eyes tracking over her in a way that felt clinical, assessing. He ended the call. "Better," he said. "You look like someone who made a choice instead of someone who had one made for her. Is there a difference? In how people perceive you?" "Yes. Perception is everything." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit. We need to establish ground rules." Evelyn sat. The leather chair was too big for her, making her feel like a kid called to the principal's office. Ground rules for what? For surviving the next 24 hours without completely destroying your life. Victor leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. By now, Ryan knows you never came to see him last night. He's probably confused, concerned maybe, if he's capable of that. He's definitely been calling. 17 times. He'll call more. And when he doesn't reach you, he'll come looking. He'll check your apartment, your work, anywhere he thinks you might be. Victor paused. He won't check here. Not yet. But eventually, someone will tell him you were seen leaving this building this morning. And when that happens, everything changes. So what do? We control the narrative. We make sure that when the truth comes out, it comes out on our terms. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and turned the screen toward her. "Look at this." It was a photo. Her and Victor at the gala 3 months ago. She was laughing at something off camera, and he was watching her with an expression she'd never seen on his face during their brief interaction that night. Interested, almost fond. "I don't remember this being taken," she said. "You wouldn't. Professional photographer, paid to be invisible. I have about a dozen photos from that night. You and I talking by the bar. Dancing once, briefly, walking out onto the balcony." He pulled the phone back. Individually, they mean nothing. Together, they tell a story. Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What story?" "That this didn't start last night. That there's been something between us for months. An attraction we tried to ignore out of respect for my son until we couldn't anymore." His eyes held hers. People love a forbidden romance. They'll eat it up. And more importantly, they'll believe it. You're rewriting history. I'm providing context. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Evelyn stood, suddenly needing to move. You're making it look like I was cheating on Ryan, like I'm the one who... You are the one, Victor cut in. You slept with his father. That's the reality. The only question is whether you're a naive girl who got swept up in passion or a calculating woman who traded up. Which version do you prefer? Neither. She preferred the version where she hadn't done this at all. Where she'd gone home last night, cried herself to sleep, and woken up to handle her heartbreak like a normal person instead of, "I can see you thinking about running." Victor said quietly. Don't. You can't undo this. You can only move forward. Into what? Some fabricated story where I'm either an idiot or a monster? Into a story where you have power. He stood, circling the desk to lean against it, arms crossed. Right now, you're panicking because you're thinking about what people will say. Ryan's friends, your coworkers, strangers who don't know you and don't matter. But here's what you should be thinking about. Your father gets to live. You never have to work a double shift again. You never have to smile through someone's condescension or make yourself small to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. You traded one night for a completely different life. That's not weakness. That's strategy. It's prostitution. It's a transaction, and everyone makes them. Ryan traded 8 months of fake affection for entertainment and his father's approval. His friends trade their dignity for proximity to money. Everyone in my world is selling something. The only difference is whether they're honest about the price. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in his logic, the place where his cynicism became cruelty. But underneath the anger and shame, a small voice whispered that he wasn't entirely wrong. She had made a choice. Maybe not a good one, maybe not one she'd be proud of in 10 years, but a choice nonetheless. And Victor was offering her a way through the aftermath that didn't involve complete social annihilation. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Today? I want you to come with me to brunch. There's a place I go every Sunday, very public, very visible. We'll be seen together. We'll look comfortable with each other. Like this is something that's been building for a while, not something that happened in a fit of revenge." He tilted his head. "Can you do that? Pretend this was a love story instead of a disaster. Pretend this was inevitable. That's more believable." Evelyn thought about Ryan, about the bet, the lies, the 8 months she'd wasted being someone's punchline, about Melissa's laugh and the sound of them kissing while Evelyn stood outside like an idiot. "Yes," she said, "I can do that." "Good." Victor checked his watch. "We leave in 15 minutes. Fix your hair. You look like you've been through a war." "I feel like it." "You'll get used to it." She wasn't sure if that was reassuring or terrifying. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu. All white tablecloths and crystal glasses and waiters who moved like ghosts. Victor's hand rested on the small of Evelyn's back as they walked in, a gesture of casual possession that made her skin prickle. People noticed. Of course they noticed. Victor Cole didn't bring women to brunch. Everyone seemed to know this instinctively, the way they knew not to stare directly at the sun. They stared anyway. The hostess seated them at a table by the window, maximum visibility. Victor ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted, which should have annoyed her but somehow didn't. She was too busy trying not to shake. "Relax," Victor said once the hostess had gone. "You look like you're about to bolt." "I feel like I'm on display." "You are. That's the point." He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. "Tell me something about yourself that I don't already know." The abrupt shift threw her. "What?" "I know the facts. Your background, your work history, your father's illness. But I don't know the smaller things. What you drink when you're not drinking whiskey. What you do on Thursday nights. Why you paint." His eyes stayed on hers. "If we're selling a story, it helps if we know each other. You're the one who investigated me. Background checks don't tell me who you are, just what you've done." He paused as the waiter brought coffee. "So, who are you, Evelyn Harper?" She stared at him. This felt like a trap, but she couldn't figure out what kind. "I don't know how to answer that." "Start with something small. Favorite color. First concert. Why you turned down art school." He took a sip of coffee. "Something true." "Why does it matter?" "Because in about 5 minutes, someone's going to come over to this table and ask who you are. And when I introduce you, I want to sound like a man who knows the woman he's sleeping with. Not like I picked you up at random." The bluntness stung. But he had a point. "Blue?" Evelyn said finally. "My favorite color is blue. Dark blue, like the ocean at night. I turned down art school because my mother had just died and my father was falling apart. Someone needed to keep the house running, pay the bills, make sure he ate. That someone was me." She picked up her own coffee, mostly to have something to do with her hands. "And I've never been to a concert. We couldn't afford it growing up, and by the time I had my own money, I was too busy working to have time. Something shifted in Victor's expression. Not quite sympathy, more like recognition. You've been taking care of people your whole life. Someone had to, and no one took care of you. It wasn't a question. Evelyn felt her throat tighten. That's not... I'm fine. I've always been fine. You're a terrible liar. Victor set down his cup. That's going to be a problem if you want to survive in my world. People will smell weakness. They'll use it against you. Then maybe I don't want to survive in your world. Too late. You're already here. Before Evelyn could respond, a man in an expensive suit appeared beside their table. He was younger than Victor, maybe early 40s, with the kind of polished look that came from personal trainers and expensive haircuts. Victor, the man said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. I didn't expect to see you here. With company. Victor's hand moved across the table, covering Evelyn's. The gesture looked natural, possessive. Marcus. Evelyn, this is Marcus Chen. He runs a hedge fund that occasionally tries to compete with mine. Marcus? Evelyn Harper. Marcus's eyes sharpened with interest. Harper. Why does that name sound familiar? Evelyn's been working in art acquisition, Victor said smoothly. We met a few months ago at the Grayson Gala. She has an eye for undervalued pieces. It was a complete lie delivered with such confidence that Evelyn almost believed it herself. She forced herself to smile, to shake Marcus's offered hand, to play the part Victor had written for her. How fascinating, Marcus said. Are you consulting for Victor's collection? Among other things, Victor said before Evelyn could answer. His thumb traced a circle on the back of her hand. She's been advising me on several acquisitions, and some more personal matters. The implication was clear. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Well, that's quite the development. Does Ryan know? The question hung in the air like a blade. Evelyn felt Victor's hand tighten on hers. Ryan and I have an understanding, Victor said. His voice stayed level, but something cold moved underneath it. He makes his choices. I make mine. Marcus's smile turned sharp. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear it. I'm sure you'll tell him. Victor's tone made it clear the conversation was over. Enjoy your brunch, Marcus. Marcus left, but Evelyn could feel him watching from across the room. Could feel everyone watching, actually. The whole restaurant had gone quieter, attention focused on their table like they were the main event. That was a warning shot, she said quietly. That was Marcus doing exactly what I expected him to do, spread gossip like wildfire. By this afternoon, everyone in our circle will know I'm seeing someone new. By tonight, they'll know it's you. And by tomorrow morning, Ryan will be calling me. Victor picked up his menu. The Eggs Benedict is excellent here. How can you be so calm about this? Because I've been playing this game since before you were born. I know exactly how it unfolds. He glanced at her over the menu. Do you trust me? No. Smart, but you're going to have to fake it convincingly. He set down the menu. Here's what happens next. Ryan calls. I don't answer. He shows up at my office. I tell him the truth, that you and I have been drawn to each other for months, that we tried to resist out of respect for him, but last night everything changed. He'll be furious. He'll accuse you of using him to get to me. He'll say terrible things. And I'm supposed to just take it? You're supposed to stand beside me and let me handle it, because if you try to defend yourself, you'll look weak. If you apologize, you'll look guilty. The only move that works is to look like you've already moved on, like he's not important enough to fight with. Victor's eyes held hers. Can you do that? Evelyn thought about Ryan's face when he realized what she'd done. The shock, the anger, the betrayal. Part of her wanted to see it, wanted him to feel a fraction of what she'd felt last night. But another part, the part that was still the girl who'd loved him, flinched away from the cruelty of it. I don't know, she said honestly. Then you'd better figure it out fast, because he just walked in. Evelyn's head snapped around. There, standing in the entrance with wild eyes and disheveled clothes, was Ryan. He looked like he hadn't slept, like he'd been searching for her all night. Their eyes met across the restaurant. For a second, everything froze. Ryan's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, dawning horror. His gaze dropped to where Victor's hand still covered hers on the table. To the dress she was wearing, expensive and new. To the way she was sitting in his father's space like she belonged there. Then he started walking toward them. "Steady," Victor murmured. "Don't look away. Don't apologize. You have nothing to be sorry for." But she did. She had so many things to be sorry for, starting with the fact that even now, watching Ryan's world shatter, part of her felt vindicated, triumphant, like she'd won something. Ryan reached their table. Up close, he looked worse, sweat on his upper lip, hands clenched into fists. "Evelyn, what the hell is this?" "Good morning, Ryan," Victor said calmly. "Join us for brunch?" "Don't!" Ryan's voice shook. "Don't you dare act like this is normal." "Evelyn, what are you doing? Why are you—" He seemed to run out of words. "Why are you with him?" Evelyn opened her mouth, but Victor squeezed her hand. A warning. She closed it again. "Evelyn and I are having a private conversation," Victor said. "If you'd like to speak with me, call my office and schedule an appointment." "An appointment? To talk about the fact that she's—" Ryan's face was turning red. "You were supposed to come over last night. I called you 17 times. I thought something happened to you." "Something did happen to me," Evelyn said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I found out the truth." Ryan's eyes widened. "What truth? What are you talking about?" "The bet, Melissa, all of it." She pulled her hand free from Victor's, needing to feel like this moment was hers. "I heard you, Ryan, last night. I heard everything you said about me." The color drained from Ryan's face. "That wasn't— You don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You never loved me. It was all a game. A test from your father to see how long you could keep me fooled." She stood, surprising herself. "Well, congratulations. You succeeded. 8 months. That's got to be some kind of record." "Evelyn, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you're sorry I found out? That you didn't mean for me to hear?" She felt something cracking open in her chest. Not the cold thing from last night. Something hotter, angrier. "You used me. You made me think I mattered to you when I was nothing but entertainment. So, no, I don't want your explanation." People were definitely staring now. The whole restaurant had gone silent, watching the drama unfold like it was dinner theater. Ryan reached for her. "Just talk to me. Alone. Without him twisting everything." Victor stood. He didn't move between them, didn't make a show of protecting her. He just stood, and somehow that was enough to make Ryan step back. "Evelyn can speak for herself," Victor said quietly. "If she wants to talk to you, she will. But I think she's made her position clear." "You did this," Ryan said, rounding on his father. "You planned this. You wanted to take her from me, so you—" "What? Seduced her? Paid her?" "I didn't have to do either. She came to me." Victor's voice was flat, factual. "Your mistake was assuming she was too weak to make her own choices. That she'd stay loyal to you even after learning you'd been lying to her since the beginning. You underestimated her. I didn't." Ryan looked between them, understanding finally dawning. "You slept with him. You actually— with my father." "Yes," Evelyn said. The word felt like jumping off a cliff. "I did. Last night. In his bed. While you were with Melissa." Ryan's hand moved before she saw it coming. Not toward her, toward Victor, but Victor caught his wrist easily, his grip iron tight. "I wouldn't," Victor said softly. "Not here. Not in front of witnesses. You're angry. You're humiliated. I understand. But if you take a swing at me, you lose more than this fight. You lose your position in the company, your trust fund, everything I've built for you. Is she worth that?" Ryan jerked his hand free. For a second, Evelyn thought he might do it anyway. Might throw the punch just to prove he could. But whatever rebellion lived in him wasn't strong enough to overcome years of training. He stepped back. "You're a whore," he said to Evelyn. "That's all you'll ever be to him. A whore he's using to prove a point." The word hit like a slap. Evelyn felt her face go hot, shame and rage warring in her chest. But before she could respond, Victor moved. He didn't hit Ryan. That would have been too simple. Instead, he leaned in close and said something too quiet for Evelyn to hear. Whatever it was made Ryan go pale. Then Victor straightened, took Evelyn's hand, and said, "We're leaving." He dropped enough cash on the table to cover a week's worth of meals and guided her toward the exit. The entire restaurant watched them go. Evelyn kept her head up, kept her expression neutral, even though she wanted to crawl out of her skin. They made it outside before her legs started shaking. "Breathe," Victor said. His hand was on her elbow, steadying her. "You did well." "What? I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal. First public confrontation is always the hardest." He guided her toward a black car that had materialized at the curb. A driver stood beside it holding the door open. "Get in." She got in. The interior was all leather and tinted windows and blessed privacy. Victor slid in beside her, and the driver closed the door, sealing them away from the stares and whispers. Evelyn pressed her hands to her face. "Everyone saw? Everyone knows." That was the point. "He called me a whore." "He called you what he thinks will hurt most. It doesn't make it true." Victor's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. "You traded sex for security. So does every person who marries for money instead of love. The only difference is you're honest about it. That doesn't make it better." "No, but it makes it real." He pulled her hands away from her face, forcing her to look at him. "You can fall apart later. Right now you need to hold it together, because we're not done yet." "What do you mean?" "I mean Ryan's going to call in reinforcements, his mother, his friends, people who'll try to convince you that you made a mistake, that you can fix this, that you should beg for forgiveness, and you need to be ready to tell them all to go to hell." Evelyn's stomach lurched. "His mother? I've never even met his mother." "You will. Probably tonight. She'll want to assess the damage, figure out if you're a real threat, or just a tantrum Ryan's throwing." Victor's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "And when she comes, you need to remember something important." "What?" "That you're not the same girl who showed up at that penthouse last night. That girl was breakable. You're not. Not anymore." She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel like the transformation he kept talking about had actually happened, like she'd become someone stronger overnight. But mostly, she just felt lost. The driver pulled up outside a building Evelyn didn't recognize, all glass and steel, impossibly tall, the kind of place that screamed money and power. "Where are we?" she asked. "Your new home." Victor opened the car door. "Welcome to the Meridian." The apartment was on the 42nd floor. Evelyn stepped out of the private elevator into a space that looked like it had been pulled from an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, furniture in shades of cream and gray, art on the walls that probably cost more than her father's house. Everything was perfect, sterile, like a hotel room designed for someone with no personality. "It's furnished," Victor said, watching her take it in. "But you can change whatever you want. Hire a decorator if you prefer. The account information is on the counter." Evelyn walked to the windows. 42 floors up, the city looked small, manageable, like something she could control if she just figured out the right angle. "How long have you owned this place?" "I bought the building 6 years ago. This unit's been vacant for 2. I was waiting for the right tenant." He came to stand beside her, hands in his pockets. "You can see the harbor from the bedroom, and your father's hospital is 4 blocks east, close enough to visit whenever you want." Of course he'd thought of that. Of course he'd planned this down to the smallest detail, including proximity to the one person she couldn't walk away from. "What's the rent?" she asked. "There isn't one." "Victor, you're not a tenant. You're mine. That means you live where I can keep you safe and accessible. This building has security, cameras, a concierge who reports to me. No one gets up here without my knowing about it." He turned to face her. "And before you argue about independence or charity, understand that this isn't kindness. It's investment. I'm putting you somewhere I can monitor you, control who has access to you, and make sure you don't do anything stupid while you're still figuring out how my world works." The honesty was almost refreshing. Almost. "So I'm a prisoner." "You're protected. There's a difference." "Not from where I'm standing." Victor's mouth twitched. "You'll adjust. Most people would kill for this kind of cage." "I'm not most people." "No, you're not. Which is why you're here instead of in Ryan's bed pretending to be happy." He checked his watch. "I have a meeting in an hour. I need to go. There's food in the refrigerator, clothes in the closet that should fit. Your things from your apartment will be here by tonight." Evelyn's head snapped around. My things? You can't just... I already did. I sent people this morning. Everything's being packed and moved as we speak. He said it like he was discussing the weather. Your landlord was compensated for breaking the lease. Your roommate was given a month's rent as inconvenience money. It's handled. You had no right. I had every right. You're not going back there. Not to that neighborhood, not to that life. You want to be done with being small. This is what that looks like. No more cramped apartments with broken heaters. No more double shifts to make rent. You live here now. You live in my world. And that means I make decisions about your safety whether you like it or not. He was already walking toward the elevator. Evelyn followed, anger rising in her throat like bile. You can't just decide things for me. I'm not a child. Then stop acting like one. Victor hit the elevator button. You made a choice last night, a big one. Now you're dealing with the consequences. And part of those consequences is that you don't get to keep one foot in your old life while you enjoy the benefits of the new one. You're all in, Evelyn. That's what you agreed to. I didn't agree to being controlled. Yes, you did. When you let me touch you. When you stayed in my bed. When you sat across from me at brunch and let me hold your hand while Ryan watched. Every one of those was a choice to let me make the rules. The elevator doors opened. He stepped inside, then turned back to face her. I'll be back tonight. We have dinner with some associates at 8. Wear something black. There's a dress in the closet, third from the left. It'll fit. What if I don't want to go to dinner? Then don't. Stay here. Order takeout. Watch TV. Pretend you're still in control of your own schedule. His eyes held hers. But understand that every time you choose comfort over showing up, you lose ground. My world doesn't reward people who hide. It rewards people who show up and prove they belong there. The doors started to close. Evelyn shoved her hand between them, forcing them open. Why are you doing this? Really? Not the surface reasons, not the strategy. Why do you actually want me here? Victor looked at her for a long moment. Because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only want something from me. Money, power, access. And you don't want those things. You want to stop being afraid. That's different, interesting. And I have a weakness for interesting things. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting today. He pulled her hand away from the door. 8 o'clock, black dress. Don't make me send someone to drag you there. The doors closed. Evelyn stood in the empty hallway, her heart pounding, her hands shaking with anger, and something else she didn't want to name. She went back into the apartment and locked the door. Then she stood in the middle of all that expensive emptiness and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting more calls from Ryan. Instead, it was her father. Hey, sweetheart, feeling good today. Doctor says I might get to go home next week if the numbers stay stable. Can you come by later? Want to hear about your weekend? Evelyn stared at the message. Her father had no idea what she'd done. No idea that his survival had been bought with his daughter's body, her dignity, her entire future. He thought some anonymous angel had saved him. He'd never know the angel's name was Victor Cole, and the price was everything Evelyn used to be. She typed back, I'll come by this afternoon. Love you. Then she walked to the closet Victor had mentioned. Inside were clothes she'd never bought. Designer labels, perfect sizes, everything organized by color and type. She found the black dress he'd told her to wear, sleek, expensive, cut in a way that would make her look like she belonged in rooms full of people who mattered. She hated that it was beautiful. She hated more that she wanted to wear it. Instead, she changed into jeans and a sweater from her old life. Clothes that had been delivered in boxes, now stacked in the corner of the bedroom, and left the apartment. The elevator required a key card to operate. Hers was sitting on the kitchen counter, black plastic with her name embossed in silver. She grabbed it and rode down to the lobby. The concierge looked up as she passed. Miss Harper, do you need a car? She stopped. How do you know my name? Mr. Cole informed us you'd be living in the building. I'm James. If you need anything, transportation, groceries, reservations, just call down. We're here to help. We're here to watch me, Evelyn thought. We're here to report back to Victor about where I go and when I leave. I'm fine, she said. Just going for a walk. Of course, the neighborhood's very safe, but if you'd prefer a driver, I said I'm fine. She pushed through the doors before James could offer anything else. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright, the street too clean, everything too different from the neighborhood she'd left behind. This part of the city was where people with money lived, where they walked their expensive dogs and carried shopping bags from stores that didn't advertise prices. Evelyn had never belonged here. She still didn't. She walked 4 blocks to the hospital, trying to ignore how easy it was, how close Victor had put her to the one thing that mattered most. It felt like a leash disguised as convenience. Her father was sitting up in bed when she arrived, looking better than he had in months. The color was back in his face, the light back in his eyes. He smiled when he saw her. "There's my girl. Come here. Let me look at you." Evelyn crossed to the bed and let him hug her. He smelled like hospital soap and the cologne she'd bought him last Christmas. Normal, safe, everything her life used to be. "You look tired," he said, pulling back to study her face. "You working too hard again?" "Just didn't sleep well." "Bad dreams?" "Something like that." She sat in the chair beside his bed. "How are you feeling?" "Really? Really? I feel like I'm going to beat this thing. The doctor said the latest scans show significant improvement. Whatever treatment plan this mystery donor put together, it's working." He took her hand. "I wish I could thank them. Whoever they are. They gave me my life back." Evelyn's throat tightened. "I'm sure they know you're grateful." "I hope so. Because I am. Every day I wake up and I'm still here. That's because of them. Because someone decided my life was worth saving." He squeezed her hand. "Makes you think, doesn't it? About kindness. About how much difference one person can make." She wanted to laugh. Wanted to tell him that kindness had nothing to do with it. That his life had been saved as part of a transaction, a test, a game between a father and son who both saw people as pieces to be moved around a board. But she couldn't. Because her father needed to believe in angels and altruism and a world where good things happen to good people for good reasons, even if that world didn't exist. "Yeah," she said, "it really makes you think." They talked for another hour. He told her about the other patients, the nurses, the food that was terrible but getting better. She told him edited versions of her life. Work was fine, she'd moved to a nicer apartment, everything was good. All lies, all necessary. When visiting hours ended, she kissed his forehead and promised to come back soon. Then she walked out into the hallway and let herself feel the weight of what she'd done. Her father was alive because she'd sold herself to a man who collected people like other people collected art. Valuable. Interesting. Ultimately disposable. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Car's waiting outside. Victor says you need to be back by 7 to get ready." She looked at the time. 6:15. She'd been with her father longer than she'd realized. Outside, a black sedan idled at the curb. The driver was the same one from this morning. He opened the door as she approached. "Miss Harper." She got in without arguing. The fight had gone out of her somewhere between her father's smile and the reminder that her new life came with a schedule she didn't control. Back at the apartment, she showered and dried her hair, put on makeup that made her look polished instead of terrified, pulled the black dress from the closet and zipped it up, watching in the mirror as she transformed into someone who might actually belong at Victor's dinner table. The girl looking back at her was a stranger, beautiful, cold, expensive. She looked like someone who'd made a deal with the devil and was learning to like it. At exactly 8 o'clock, Victor's key turned in the lock. He walked in wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her car used to be worth, his expression unreadable as he took her in. "You wore the dress. You said to wear it. I also said a lot of things this morning that you ignored. I wasn't sure you'd listen to this one." He walked closer, adjusting the neckline slightly. His fingers brushed her collarbone. "But you did. Why?" "Because you were right. If I want to survive in your world, I need to show up. So I'm showing up. Even though you hate it. Even though I hate it." Victor smiled. "Good. That means you're learning. The best armor is the kind that fits perfectly even when it hurts to wear." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "No, but I'll go anyway." "That's my girl." The dinner was at a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign. You either knew where it was or you didn't belong there. Victor guided her inside with his hand on her back, that same possessive gesture that told everyone watching exactly who she was to him. The table was in a private room. 6 people already seated, 4 men, 2 women, all of them older than Evelyn, all of them looking at her like she was a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. "Everyone, this is Evelyn Harper," Victor said. "Evelyn, these are some of my oldest associates. Michael runs the venture capital arm. Sarah handles international acquisitions. You don't need to remember everyone's names tonight. Just smile and let them think you're mysterious." He pulled out her chair. She sat, feeling 6 pairs of eyes dissecting her. The woman across from her, Sarah, apparently, had a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Evelyn, what a lovely name. How did you and Victor meet?" The question was a trap. Evelyn could feel it. She glanced at Victor, who was pouring wine like this was a normal dinner with normal people having normal conversations. "At a gala," Evelyn said. "A few months ago. We started talking and—" She paused, trying to find words that weren't complete lies. "It became something neither of us expected." "I'm sure it did," Sarah said. "Victor's usually so private about his personal life. We were all surprised when he said he was bringing someone tonight." "Surprised?" one of the men said. "I almost had a heart attack. Victor doesn't do relationships. He does transactions." "Marcus," Victor said quietly. "Don't." But Marcus was already leaning forward, his eyes on Evelyn. "So what's the transaction here? What does someone like you bring to the table that's worth Victor's time?" The table went silent. Evelyn felt her face go hot. This was what Victor had warned her about, people who smelled weakness and went for the throat. "I bring perspective," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Everyone at this table has money, power, success. You all see the world from the same angle. I see it from a different one that's valuable to someone who's tired of echo chambers." Marcus laughed. "Perspective, that's a new word for it." "That's enough." Victor's voice was ice. "Evelyn is here because I want her here. If anyone has a problem with that, you're welcome to leave." No one moved. The power dynamic was obvious. Victor owned this table, these people, this entire situation. They could snipe and test and probe, but ultimately, he decided what happened here. Sarah raised her glass. "To perspective, then, and to Victor's excellent taste." Everyone drank. The conversation moved on to business, deals closing, markets shifting, people Evelyn didn't know making moves she didn't understand. She sat quietly, trying to follow along, trying to look like she belonged. Halfway through dinner, Sarah leaned over. "You're doing well, better than the last girl Victor brought around." Evelyn blinked. "There was a last girl?" 3 years ago. Terrible choice. She lasted 1 dinner before she ran out crying. Victor never saw her again. Sarah cut her steak with precise movements. "He has very high standards. The fact that you're still here means you're passing some kind of test." "What kind of test?" "The kind where he figures out if you're strong enough to handle being with him, or if you're just another pretty distraction." Sarah's smile was sharp. "My money's on distraction, but I've been wrong before." Evelyn wanted to throw her wine in Sarah's face, wanted to walk out and prove everyone right, that she didn't belong, that this was all a mistake, that she was just a waitress playing dress-up in a world too big for her. But Victor's hand found hers under the table, a small touch, a reminder. She stayed in her seat, smiled blandly at Sarah, ate her dinner like the insults were water rolling off glass. By the time dessert arrived, she'd stopped listening to the words and started watching the dynamics. The way Michael deferred to Victor on every major point. The way Sarah pushed back just enough to seem independent, but always backed down when it mattered. The way all of them circled Victor like planets around a sun, held in place by gravity and fear and the knowledge that he could destroy any of them with a phone call. This was power, real power. Not the kind that came from being loud or aggressive, but the kind that came from being essential. From being the person everyone needed more than they needed their pride. Victor had that. And by sitting at his side, Evelyn was borrowing it. The question was how long she could hold on to it before it burned her alive. After dinner, Victor drove her back to the apartment himself. The car was silent except for the sound of traffic outside. Evelyn stared out the window, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. "You did better than I expected," Victor said finally. "Sarah said I was a distraction. Sarah's jealous. She's been trying to get my attention for 5 years. Seeing you there instead of her must have been painful." He pulled into the underground garage of her building. Don't let her get in your head. She's vicious when she's threatened. I'm not threatening anyone. Evelyn gestured helplessly. I'm just trying to survive each day without completely falling apart. I know, but they don't see that. They see a woman who appeared out of nowhere and captured my attention. To them, that makes you dangerous. He turned off the car, which means you need to become actually dangerous, or they'll eat you alive. How am I supposed to do that? By learning, watching, figuring out where the power is and how to take it. He got out, coming around to open her door. You're smart, Evelyn. Smarter than you think. You just need to stop apologizing for it. They rode the elevator up in silence. At her door, she expected him to leave. Instead, he followed her inside. What are you doing? She asked. Making sure you're settled, that you have everything you need. He walked to the windows, looking out at the city, and making sure you understand what happens next. What happens next? Ryan's going to escalate. He spent the last 24 hours stewing in humiliation and anger. By now, he's convinced himself that you're a victim, that I manipulated you, that he can save you if he just tries hard enough. Victor turned to face her. He's going to show up here, probably tomorrow. And when he does, you need to be ready. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Ready for what? To destroy him. Victor said it simply, factually. Not physically, not even emotionally, really. But you need to make it clear that you chose this, that you're not his victim or his lost love or anything he can rescue. You're mine, willingly, permanently, and he needs to accept that or get out of the way. I can't do that. Yes, you can. You already did it at brunch. You just need to do it again, with more conviction. He crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. I know this is hard. I know you're scared and out of your depth and probably regretting every choice that brought you here. But you can't go back, Evelyn. You can only go forward, and forward means being cruel to the man who was cruel to you first. That makes me as bad as him. No, it makes you even. There's a difference. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. Ryan used you for sport. You're using me for survival. Only one of those is justified. Are you? Using me, I mean. Victor smiled. Of course I am. I told you that from the beginning. The question is whether you're okay with it. Evelyn should say no, should push him away, demand he take her back to her old life, refuse to play whatever game this was. But her old life had a broken heater and double shifts and a father who was only alive because Victor Cole had decided to save him. Her old life had Ryan's lies and Melissa's laugh and 8 months of being someone's punchline. This life had silk sheets and black dresses and a man who looked at her like she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. I'm okay with it, she said. For now. For now is all I need. He kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be worse than today. That's encouraging. I don't do encouragement. I do honesty. He headed for the door, then stopped. One more thing. There's a lawyer coming by tomorrow morning at 10. He's going to have you sign some papers. Evelyn's blood went cold. What kind of papers? The kind that protect both of us. Non-disclosure agreements, financial arrangements, a contract that outlines exactly what this relationship entails and what happens if it ends. He said it like he was discussing grocery lists. Standard procedure for this kind of situation. This kind of situation being what? Me selling myself to you? You entering into a mutually beneficial arrangement with someone who has significantly more resources and legal exposure than you do. I need protection. So do you. The contract provides that. What if I don't want to sign it? Then we end this now. I'll make sure your father's care continues. Give you 6 months' rent on this place to get on your feet, and we part ways. No hard feelings. His eyes held hers. But if you sign, you're committing, really committing, to staying with me, following my rules, and becoming the person I know you can be. Your choice. He left before she could respond. The door clicked shut behind him, and Evelyn was alone in the expensive silence of her new life. She walked to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out her phone and looked at the messages she'd been ignoring all day. 17 new texts from Ryan, 3 voicemails. All of them some variation of, please talk to me, and I can explain, and this isn't what you think. She deleted them without listening. Then she pulled up a blank text to her father and typed, I love you. I'm glad you're getting better. I'll come see you again soon. Simple. True. The only uncomplicated thing left in her entire life. She hit send and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in this city, Ryan was probably planning his next move. Somewhere else, Victor was probably strategizing 3 steps ahead. And here she was, caught between them, trying to figure out who she was in the aftermath of burning her entire world down. The girl in the red dress was gone. That much was true. But whoever had taken her place was still being written, and Evelyn wasn't sure yet if she'd end up the hero of that story or the villain. Maybe, in Victor's world, there wasn't a difference. The lawyer arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. He was younger than Evelyn expected, maybe early 30s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase that looked like it had seen actual use. He introduced himself as David Chen, shook her hand with the practiced firmness of someone who'd done this 1,000 times, and set up his laptop on her dining table without asking permission. "Mr. Cole briefed me on the situation," he said, pulling documents from his briefcase. "I've prepared a comprehensive agreement that covers the parameters of your arrangement. I'll walk you through each section, answer any questions, and then we can proceed with signatures if you're comfortable." Evelyn sat across from him, her coffee going cold in her hands. "What if I'm not comfortable?" David looked up, pushing his glasses higher on his nose. "Then we don't sign. But I should tell you that Mr. Cole was very specific about making this fair to both parties. He's not trying to trap you, he's trying to protect you. By making me sign a contract. By making everything explicit. No ambiguity, no room for misunderstanding. You know exactly what you're agreeing to and exactly what you get in return." He turned the laptop toward her. "Look, Section 1 covers financial arrangements. Monthly allowance of $15,000 deposited directly into an account I'll help you set up. Additional funds available for approved expenses, clothing, education, travel. Your father's medical care covered indefinitely. No caps, no limitations. $15,000. Evelyn's breath caught. That was more than she'd made in 6 months at her old job. Section 2, David continued, covers living arrangements. This apartment is yours for as long as the relationship continues. If it ends, you have 90 days to relocate, with a one-time payment of $100,000 to help you transition. If the relationship lasts more than 2 years, that payment increases to $500,000. That's... Evelyn couldn't find words. That's insane. That's insurance. Mr. Cole wants to make sure you're taken care of, even if things don't work out. David scrolled down. Section 3 is where it gets more complicated. This covers expectations and obligations. You're expected to accompany Mr. Cole to social events as requested, typically 2 to 3 per week. You're expected to maintain a certain standard of appearance. Grooming, fitness, appropriate attire for the occasion. You're expected to be available when he wants you, within reason. Available meaning what? Meaning present, responsive, not disappearing for days without communication. He's not asking you to be at his beck and call 24/7, but he is asking for priority access to your time and attention. David met her eyes. And yes, Section 3.6 covers physical intimacy. The expectation is mutual and consensual participation in a sexual relationship. If at any point you want that to stop, there's a mechanism for renegotiation, but it would likely mean restructuring the entire agreement. Evelyn's face went hot. Seeing it written out like that, mutual and consensual participation in a sexual relationship, made it feel even more transactional than it already was. Section 4 covers non-disclosure, David said. You can't talk about Mr. Cole's business dealings, his personal life, or the terms of this agreement with anyone outside a very limited circle. Breaking NDA results in immediate termination of the agreement and potential legal action. So I can't tell anyone the truth about what this is. You can tell people you're in a relationship with Victor Cole. You just can't tell them the contractual specifics. David closed the laptop. Look, I know this feels clinical, but I've seen what happens when powerful people enter relationships without clear boundaries. Someone always gets hurt, usually the person with less power. This way, you know exactly what you're getting into. You have protections, exit clauses, compensation that ensures you're not left with nothing if he gets bored or you decide this isn't worth it. And if I don't sign, then Mr. Cole will honor his verbal agreement to continue your father's care and give you 6 months in this apartment. After that, you're on your own. David leaned back in his chair. But between you and me, I've worked with Victor Cole for 8 years. I've never seen him offer terms this generous. Whatever he sees in you, it's significant. You could sign this, play your cards right, and walk away in a few years with enough money to do whatever you want with your life. Or you could walk away now and spend the rest of your life wondering what you gave up. Evelyn stared at the laptop, at the document that would turn her into something she'd never imagined being: a kept woman, a mistress, a transaction dressed up as a relationship, but also financially secure, protected, free from the constant fear that had defined her adult life. I need to read it myself, she said. All of it, before I sign anything. David smiled. Smart. Take your time. I'll get more coffee. He disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Evelyn alone with the contract. She pulled the laptop closer and started reading. Every word, every clause, every subsection that defined exactly what she was worth to Victor Cole and what he expected in return. It took an hour. By the end, her eyes burned and her head ached, but she understood. Understood that this wasn't love or romance or anything close to what she'd thought a relationship should be. This was a business arrangement with intimacy as one of the deliverables, clinical, precise, utterly without illusion, and somehow that made it easier to accept. David returned when she closed the laptop. Questions? Just one. What happens if I fall in love with him? David's expression softened. That's not covered in the contract, that's between you and him. But if I were you, I'd try very hard not to. Victor Cole doesn't do love, he does ownership, and those aren't the same thing. Evelyn picked up the pen he'd left on the table, looked at the signature line waiting for her name, thought about her father, alive and getting better, thought about Ryan, who'd used her without a contract or compensation or any of the protections Victor was offering, thought about the girl in the red dress who'd wanted to be loved so badly she'd ignored every warning sign. She signed her name. Quick, before she could change her mind. Initials on every page, full signature at the end, making it official, making it real. David witnessed and countersigned, then packed everything back into his briefcase. Welcome to the deep end, Miss Harper. Try not to drown. After he left, Evelyn sat in the silence of the apartment and tried to figure out what she felt. Not regret exactly. Not quite acceptance either. Something in between, something that tasted like surrender and strategy mixed together. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Signed? She typed back, yes. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, good. Stay home today. Tomorrow we have an event, something important. What kind of event? The kind where you meet my wife. Evelyn stared at the screen. Read the message 3 times, trying to make the words mean something other than what they clearly said. She called him. He picked up on the first ring. Your wife? She said. You have a wife? I have an ex-wife, technically still married, but we've been separated for 6 years. The divorce is complicated, prenup issues, asset division, the usual mess. He sounded unbothered. She wants to meet you. I figured it was better to get it over with in a controlled environment. You didn't think to mention this before I signed a contract to be your, whatever I am? Mistress is the traditional term. And I didn't mention it because it's not relevant. Claire and I haven't lived together or been intimate in years. Our marriage is a legal fiction at this point. Does she know about me? She knows I'm seeing someone. She doesn't know the details. Tomorrow, she'll get to form her own opinions. He paused. I'm sending a car at 7. Wear the gray dress, second closet. And Evelyn? Be ready for her to test you. Claire doesn't like being replaced, even by someone who's technically not replacing her. He hung up before she could argue. Evelyn threw her phone on the couch and resisted the urge to scream. A wife. An ex-wife. A woman who would have opinions about the girl sleeping with her husband, contract or no contract. This kept getting worse. She spent the rest of the day alternating between panic and research. She looked up Claire Cole on her laptop and found a woman who looked like she'd been born into money and married into more. Blonde, elegant, photographed at charity events and gallery openings. Every picture showed the same polished smile, the same careful distance in her eyes. The most recent photo was from 2 months ago. Claire at some foundation gala, wearing diamonds and looking like she owned the room. The caption mentioned her work with underprivileged youth and her seat on several nonprofit boards. Of course, Victor's wife was beautiful and accomplished and involved in charitable work. Of course, Evelyn was going to be compared to this woman and found wanting. That night, she barely slept. When the car arrived at 7 the next evening, she was already dressed in the gray dress Victor had specified. Silk, fitted, expensive enough to make her nervous about spilling anything on it. The driver took her to a restaurant she'd heard of but never been to, the kind of place that required reservations months in advance. Victor was waiting at the bar. He looked her over when she approached, nodded once in approval, and handed her a glass of wine. "She's late," he said. "Claire's always late. It's a power play." "Should I be worried?" "Probably. But try not to show it." He took a sip of his own drink. "Claire is brilliant, ruthless, and very good at making people feel small. Don't let her. You have something she doesn't. My current attention. Use it." "That's not helpful advice." "It's the only advice I have. Claire and I have been playing games for 15 years. You're the new piece on the board. She's going to want to figure out what you're worth and whether you're a threat." "A threat to what?" "You said you're getting divorced." "To her position, her reputation, the story she tells herself about why our marriage failed." He set down his glass. "Claire needs to believe I'm the villain, that I'm cold and unfeeling and incapable of real connection. Seeing me with someone else, someone younger, someone who actually seems to like me, that complicates her narrative." Before Evelyn could respond, a woman walked through the door. Evelyn recognized her immediately from the photos. Claire Cole in person was somehow more intimidating than in pictures. Taller, more commanding. She wore a white dress that probably cost more than Evelyn's monthly allowance and moved through the restaurant like she owned it. Her eyes found Victor, then slid to Evelyn. Something flickered in her expression. Assessment, calculation, maybe amusement. "Victor," she said, her voice smooth and controlled. "And you must be the infamous Evelyn." "Infamous?" Evelyn managed. "Everyone's talking about Victor's new companion, the girl who appeared out of nowhere and turned his head." Claire's smile was all teeth. "I had to see for myself what could accomplish such a feat." Victor gestured to their table. "Shall we sit? I'd rather not have this conversation at the bar." They moved to a corner booth, private and secluded. Claire slid in across from Evelyn, her eyes never leaving her face. "So," Claire said once they'd ordered, "tell me about yourself, Evelyn. What do you do?" It was a trap of a question. Evelyn could feel it. If she said she was a waitress, Claire would dismiss her as a gold digger. If she lied, Claire would know. "I worked in hospitality until recently," Evelyn said carefully. "Now I'm figuring out what comes next." "How fortunate that you have Victor to help you figure it out." Claire's tone was pleasant, but her eyes were sharp. "He's very good at helping people. Aren't you, darling?" Victor's expression didn't change. "I help people who are worth helping." "And Evelyn is worth it?" "I wouldn't have brought her here if she wasn't," Claire laughed. It was a cold sound. "Fair enough. Well, Evelyn, since Victor seems to think you're special, let me give you some advice, free of charge, from someone who's been where you are." "I don't think," Evelyn started, but Claire cut her off. "Victor is charming when he wants to be, attentive, generous. He'll make you feel like the most important person in the world. But it's a performance. Everything with him is transactional. He's incapable of actual love, actual connection. He'll use you until you're no longer useful, and then he'll move on to the next interesting thing." She leaned forward. "So enjoy the dresses and the apartment and whatever else he's giving you, but don't make the mistake of thinking it means anything. You're a distraction. That's all you'll ever be." The words hit like physical blows. Evelyn felt her face go hot, her hands clench under the table. Across from her, Victor's expression was unreadable. "Are you finished?" he asked Claire. "Not quite." Claire turned back to Evelyn. "One more thing. I know about the contract. David's my lawyer too, or he was until recently. I know exactly what you signed and exactly what it makes you. So let's not pretend this is a relationship. It's employment. You're being paid to warm his bed and look good at events. Own it, at least. Have some dignity." Evelyn's vision tunneled. She could feel tears building behind her eyes, could feel the urge to run rising in her throat. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Being exposed, being judged, being reduced to nothing but a transaction. But then she remembered something Victor had said. "You have something she doesn't, my current attention." Claire was here because Evelyn threatened her, because seeing Victor with someone else hurt in a way she didn't want to admit. All this venom, all these insults, They were coming from a place of pain. Evelyn took a breath, let it out slowly, looked Claire in the eye. "You're right," she said. "It is employment. Victor's paying me to be with him. And you know what? I signed that contract knowing exactly what it was. No illusions, no fairy tales, just a clear-eyed understanding of what I'm worth and what I'm willing to do for financial security." She leaned forward, matching Claire's posture. "But here's the thing you're missing. I'm 26 years old. I have my whole life ahead of me. This arrangement, it's temporary. A few years from now, I'll walk away with enough money to do whatever I want. Meanwhile, you're 15 years into a marriage that failed, still legally tied to a man you claim not to love. Spending your evening trying to make a girl half your age feel small." She paused. "Which one of us is really being used here?" Claire's face went white. For a second, Evelyn thought she'd gone too far. Then Claire started laughing. It wasn't the cold laugh from before. This one sounded genuine, surprised. "Well," Claire said, "maybe she is worth it after all." She stood, picking up her purse. "Enjoy your dinner. I've seen what I came to see." She walked out without looking back. The restaurant seemed to exhale around them. Victor was staring at Evelyn with an expression she couldn't read. "That was either the stupidest thing you've ever done or the smartest. Which do you think?" "I think you just made an enemy who'll spend the next 6 months trying to destroy you." He picked up his menu. "I also think you handled it perfectly. Claire respects strength. You showed her you have teeth. That's more than most people manage." "I thought I was supposed to be polite." "Polite gets you dismissed. What you did, that gets you remembered." He ordered for both of them, then sat back. "You surprised me. I didn't think you had that in you yet." "I didn't either." Evelyn's hands were shaking. Adrenaline, she realized. She'd just verbally eviscerated Victor's wife, ex-wife, and somehow survived. "Was that a test?" "Everything's a test. You're just finally starting to pass them." They ate in relative silence. Evelyn's mind kept replaying the confrontation, analyzing every word, every moment where she could have backed down but didn't. She felt different, harder, like another piece of the old her had burned away and something sharper had taken its place. After dinner, Victor drove her home himself. At her door, he caught her wrist. "There's something else," he said. "Something I need to tell you before you hear it from someone else." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What now?" "Ryan's planning something. I don't know what yet, but he's been making calls, talking to people. He's not accepting this, which means things are going to escalate." "Escalate how?" "I don't know. But when he makes his move, you need to be ready to bury him, completely. No mercy, no second chances." Victor's eyes were hard. "Can you do that?" She thought about the bet, the lies, 8 months of being someone's joke. She thought about Melissa's laugh and Ryan calling her a whore, and every moment she'd made herself small to make him comfortable. "Yes," she said, "I can do that." Victor smiled. "Good. Then let's see what he's got." He left her standing in the hallway, her heart pounding, her mind racing with possibilities. Ryan was coming. And when he did, she'd have to choose mercy or survival. She already knew which one she'd pick. The next morning, she woke to someone pounding on her door. She stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and checked the peephole. Ryan stood in the hallway, looking worse than she'd ever seen him. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red like he hadn't slept. He pounded again. "Evelyn, I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk." She backed away from the door. Her phone was in the bedroom. She should call Victor, call security, call someone. "Please," Ryan said, and his voice cracked. "Please just talk to me. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Evelyn stood frozen. Part of her wanted to let him in, wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted to believe there was some explanation that could make sense of everything. But she'd signed a contract. She'd made a choice. And more than that, she'd meant what she said to Claire. This was temporary, strategic, a means to an end. Letting Ryan back in would undo all of it. She walked to the intercom on the wall and pressed the button that connected to building security. "There's someone at my door who won't leave. Can you send someone up?" "Right away, Miss Harper." Ryan must have heard her through the door. "Evelyn, don't do this. I just want to talk. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need you to listen." "No," she said through the door. "I'm done listening to you. I'm done being the person you get to use when it's convenient. Go away, Ryan." "I love you." The words stopped her cold. He'd never said that before. Not in 8 months. Not once. You don't, she said quietly. You love the idea of winning. You love beating your father, but you don't love me. You never did. That's not true. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but the elevator opened. 2 security guards stepped out, moving toward Ryan with professional efficiency. Sir, you need to leave the building. Ryan looked at them, then back at Evelyn's door. I'll make this right, he said. Whatever it takes. I'll prove to you that we can fix this. The guards escorted him to the elevator. Evelyn watched through the peephole until he was gone, then slid down to sit with her back against the door. I love you. He'd waited until he'd lost her to say it, until she belonged to someone else. And now he expected her to believe it, to throw away everything she'd gained for the chance to go back to being his secret shame. No, she was done being that girl. She picked herself up off the floor and went to take a shower. When she emerged, there was a text from Victor. Ryan showed up? How did you know? Building security reports to me. Are you okay? I'm fine. I handled it. Good. Now prove you can keep handling it. He's not going to stop. This was just the opening move. Evelyn stared at the message. Victor was right. Ryan wouldn't stop. He'd keep pushing, keep trying to save her, keep making this about his redemption instead of her choice. She needed to end it, permanently. In a way he couldn't misunderstand or misinterpret. She needed to destroy him the way he'd destroyed her, and she was starting to understand exactly how to do it. Evelyn spent the next 3 days learning everything she could about Ryan's life. Not the version he'd shown her, the charming boyfriend with the easy smile and the penthouse apartment, the real version, the one Victor had access to through business records, financial reports, and the kind of information that came from owning half the city. She sat in Victor's office while he walked her through it all. Ryan's position at the company was mostly ceremonial. He had a title, an office, a salary that would make most people weep with envy. But the actual work? That was done by other people. Ryan showed up for meetings, signed things he didn't read, and spent most of his time playing at being important. He's coasting on my name, Victor said, pulling up another document on his screen. Has been since he graduated. I kept hoping he'd find something he actually cared about, something that would make him grow up. But he never did. He just kept taking and expecting it to continue forever. So what's his weakness? Evelyn asked. Victor smiled. His ego. Ryan needs to be seen as successful, powerful, in control. Take that away, and he's got nothing. He turned the screen toward her. There's a deal he's been working on for 6 months. Small tech acquisition, nothing major, but it's the first thing he's handled mostly on his own. The board meeting to approve it is next week. He's been telling everyone it's his big moment, his chance to prove he's more than just my son. And the deal is garbage. The company he wants to acquire is bleeding money, their technology is outdated, and the valuation is inflated by about 40%. I've been letting him pursue it to see if he'd figure it out himself. He hasn't. Evelyn leaned forward. What happens if the board rejects it? He looks incompetent, loses credibility, gets reassigned to something less visible while everyone whispers about how he can't function without Daddy cleaning up his mistakes. Victor's eyes met hers. Want to be the one to kill it? Her heart hammered. How? You're going to that board meeting as my guest, my advisor, whatever title makes them take you seriously. And you're going to present the case against the acquisition. Numbers. Analysis. Everything Ryan should have seen but didn't. You're going to humiliate him in front of the people whose respect he needs most. Why me? You could do it yourself. I could, but that's expected. Father correcting son, tale as old as time. You doing it? That's different. That's the girl he threw away proving she's smarter than he ever gave her credit for. That's power. He stood, walking to the window. He called you a whore. He tried to make you feel small. Now you get to show him exactly how wrong he was. Evelyn thought about Ryan at her door, claiming to love her. About 8 months of lies and the bet that had started it all. About every time she'd made herself smaller, quieter, less threatening so he'd keep wanting her. When's the meeting? She asked. Monday, 10 a.m. I'll have the analysis ready by Friday. You'll have the weekend to prepare. He glanced back at her. This is the moment, Evelyn. After this, there's no reconciliation. No forgiveness. You'll have burned that bridge so completely that not even the ashes remain. Are you sure? She thought about the contract she'd signed, about the girl in the red dress who'd wanted to be loved, about who she was becoming in the space where that girl used to be. I'm sure. The weekend was a blur of numbers and projections and learning to speak the language of corporate warfare. Victor was patient but relentless, drilling her on every detail until she could recite the problems with Ryan's deal in her sleep. By Sunday night, she was exhausted and wired, her mind buzzing with data and the knowledge that tomorrow would change everything. She barely slept. When Monday morning came, she dressed in the navy suit Victor had purchased for her, professional, expensive, designed to make her look like she belonged in a boardroom full of people who'd spent their entire lives there. Her hands shook as she applied makeup, but her reflection in the mirror looked calm, controlled, ready. Victor met her in the lobby of his building. He looked her over once, adjusted her collar slightly, and nodded. You look like someone who knows what she's talking about. Good. Stay confident. Don't let Ryan derail you. And remember, you're not doing this for revenge. You're doing it because the deal is bad and someone needs to say it. Even though the revenge is a nice bonus? He guided her toward the elevators. The board knows you're coming. I told them you've been consulting on acquisition strategy. They'll listen. What they do with the information is up to them. The boardroom was on the 63rd floor, all glass and leather, and a table that looked like it could seat 30. 12 people were already there when they arrived. Older men mostly, a few women, all of them dressed like they'd never worried about money a day in their lives. They looked up when Victor entered, then looked at Evelyn with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. Ryan was sitting at the far end of the table. His eyes locked on Evelyn, and she watched the color drain from his face. What is she doing here? He said. Evelyn's been consulting with me on various projects, Victor said smoothly, taking his seat at the head of the table. She has some insights on the Cortex acquisition that I thought the board should hear. Unless you object? It was a trap. If Ryan objected, he'd look scared. If he didn't, he'd have to sit there while Evelyn dismantled his deal. I don't object, Ryan said tightly, but I've already prepared a presentation. We'll hear yours first, then Evelyn's. Fair? Victor's tone left no room for argument. Ryan's presentation was polished, slick graphics, confident delivery, all the buzzwords about synergy and market position and growth potential. He made the Cortex acquisition sound like a sure thing, a brilliant move that would position the company for future success. Evelyn watched the board members nodding along, some taking notes, all of them looking moderately impressed. Then it was her turn. She stood, and for a second every eye in the room was on her. The mistress, the gold digger, the girl who'd appeared out of nowhere and somehow captured Victor Cole's attention. She could feel their judgment, their dismissal, their certainty that whatever she had to say couldn't possibly matter. The Cortex acquisition looks good on paper, she began. Her voice came out steady, strong. But the paper is hiding some significant problems. With the board's permission, I'd like to walk through the actual financials rather than the projections Mr. Cole presented. She pulled up her own slides. Numbers, charts, data that told a very different story than Ryan's presentation. Cortex's revenue has declined 18% year over year for the past 3 years. Their technology platform is built on infrastructure that's being phased out industry-wide. They've lost 2 major clients in the last 6 months and haven't replaced them. Their valuation is based on projected growth that has no basis in their actual performance or market conditions. She clicked to the next slide. Ryan's face was getting redder. The acquisition price is $42 million, but based on realistic projections and comparable sales, Cortex is worth approximately $24 million. We'd be overpaying by nearly 75% for a company that's actively deteriorating. Within 2 years, we'd likely have to write down the entire investment as a loss. One of the board members, an older woman with steel gray hair, leaned forward. Where did you get these numbers? Public filings, industry reports, and conversations with 3 of Cortex's former employees who left in the last year. All available information, just not included in Mr. Cole's analysis. Evelyn met the woman's eyes. With respect, this is due diligence that should have been done before bringing the acquisition to the board. The room went very quiet. Ryan stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. This is absurd, She's not a financial analyst. She's not qualified to— The numbers speak for themselves, Victor said calmly. Are you disputing the data or the person presenting it? Ryan's mouth opened and closed. He looked around the table, searching for allies, but the board members were all studying Evelyn's slides with expressions that ranged from concern to annoyed. I think we need to table this acquisition, the gray-haired woman said, pending a more thorough review. Another board member nodded. Agreed. Ryan, why wasn't this analysis done in the first place? It was. I mean, we looked at— Ryan was floundering. Evelyn watched him spiral, watched the confidence drain away as he realized he couldn't talk his way out of this. She's lying. She has to be. This is about me and her, about their relationship. She's doing this to— To what? Victor's voice cut through Ryan's rambling. To sabotage a bad deal that would cost the company millions? Is that what you're accusing her of? Ryan's hands clenched into fists. She's trying to make me look incompetent. You're doing that yourself, the gray-haired woman said. If these numbers are accurate, and they appear to be, then you brought us a deal you didn't properly vet. That's on you, not her. Evelyn gathered her materials, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. If there's nothing else, Victor said, I think we're done here. The board members filed out. Some nodded to Evelyn as they passed. A few looked at Ryan with disappointment. By the time the room cleared, only Victor, Evelyn, and Ryan remained. Ryan stared at her across the table. You destroyed me. No, Evelyn said quietly. I presented facts. You destroyed yourself by not doing the work. This is because of us. Because I hurt you, you're punishing me. I'm protecting the company. That's what Victor brought me here to do. She picked up her laptop. But if you want to make it personal, fine. Yes, you hurt me. Yes, you used me. And yes, watching you fail feels good. But that doesn't make the analysis wrong. That doesn't make your deal any less terrible. Ryan turned to his father. You set me up. You let me pursue this deal knowing it was bad, knowing I'd fail, just so she could humiliate me. I let you pursue it hoping you'd figure out it was bad and come to me before it got this far, Victor said. You didn't. Instead, you got arrogant, sloppy. You assumed your last name would carry you through, and it almost did. Evelyn just made sure it didn't. I'm your son, and you've been coasting on that for 28 years. Maybe it's time you learned to stand on your own. Victor stood. You're off acquisitions. I'm reassigning you to operations oversight. Fewer chances to make expensive mistakes. And Ryan, if you come anywhere near Evelyn again, if you show up at her building, call her, contact her in any way, I will remove you from the company entirely. Clear? Ryan looked between them. Evelyn could see it happening the moment he realized he'd lost. Not just the deal, not just his credibility. Everything. His father's favor. His position. The girl he'd claimed to love. I hate you, he said to Evelyn. I hate what you've become. Good, she said. That means I'm finally becoming something you can't use. Ryan left without another word. The door closed behind him with a heavy click. Evelyn's legs went weak. She sat down hard in the nearest chair, adrenaline draining away and leaving her hollow. You did well, Victor said. He was watching her with that assessing look he got sometimes, like he was calculating her value down to the decimal point. Better than well, actually. You destroyed him without breaking a sweat. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. First kill is always the hardest. He came around the table, crouching in front of her chair so they were eye level. How do you feel, really? Evelyn thought about it, tried to untangle the mess of emotions churning in her chest. Powerful, she said finally, and scared of how much I liked it. The power or the revenge? Both. Victor smiled. Good. That means you're learning. Power without fear leads to recklessness. Fear without power leads to paralysis. You need both to survive in this world. Is that what I'm doing? Surviving? For now. Eventually you'll move past survival to something else, but we're not there yet. He stood, offering her his hand. Come on, I'm taking you to lunch, somewhere public. I want people to see you looking victorious. She let him pull her to her feet, let him guide her out of the boardroom and into the elevator, his hand on her back in that possessive way that had become familiar. In the reflection on the elevator doors, she caught sight of herself, poised, professional, powerful. She barely recognized the woman looking back. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn settled into a routine that felt surreal in its luxury and normalcy combined. She attended events with Victor, always at his side, always dressed impeccably. She sat in on business meetings, sometimes contributing, sometimes just watching and learning. She visited her father twice a week, maintaining the fiction that everything in her life was simple and good. And slowly, imperceptibly, she stopped feeling like an imposter. The whispers followed her everywhere. Gold digger, mistress, the girl who'd stolen Victor Cole from his son. But she'd learned to wear the judgment like armor. Let them talk. Let them speculate. She knew the truth. And the truth was that she'd made a choice with eyes wide open. No illusions. No fairy tales. Just strategy and survival, and an increasingly complicated relationship with a man who treated her like a prized possession and a worthy opponent in equal measure. 3 months after the board meeting, Victor took her to a charity gala. The same one where they'd first met, back when she was Ryan's girlfriend trying desperately to fit in. Now she walked in on Victor's arm, wearing a dress that cost more than her old car, and watched people part for them like royalty. Claire was there. She caught Evelyn's eye across the room and raised her champagne glass in a small salute. Evelyn nodded back. They'd reached an understanding, she and Claire. Mutual respect born from mutual damage. They'd never be friends, but they didn't need to be enemies anymore. Ryan was not there. He'd left the city 3 weeks ago, taking a position at one of Victor's satellite offices in another state. Running away, essentially. Starting over somewhere no one knew about his failures. Evelyn felt nothing about his departure. No satisfaction, no regret. Just the distant recognition that a chapter had closed. "You're quiet tonight," Victor said, guiding her onto the dance floor. "Just thinking. About? About how different this is from the last time I was here." She let him lead, their movements practiced now from dozens of similar events. "I was so nervous then, trying so hard to be what Ryan needed me to be. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out what I need me to be." Victor's grip tightened slightly on her waist. "Have you figured it out?" She looked up at him. At this man who'd offered her a devil's bargain and delivered on every promise. Who'd protected her and used her and somehow taught her to protect and use herself. Who'd made her into something harder, sharper, more capable than she'd ever imagined being. "Not yet," she said honestly, "but I'm getting closer." 6 months after signing the contract, Evelyn sat in Victor's office going over financial reports when he said something that made her stop. "I want you to start taking classes." She looked up from the spreadsheet she'd been analyzing. "Classes in what?" "Business, finance, strategy, whatever interests you." He didn't look up from his own work. "You're good at this. The analysis, the presentations, reading people and situations, but you're self-taught, and it shows. If you're going to keep working with me, really working, not just attending events, you need proper training. You want me to go back to school? I want you to have options. Right now, you're dependent on me for everything. That's fine in the short term, but eventually our arrangement will end. When it does, I want you to be able to walk away and build whatever life you want, not scramble for survival." Evelyn set down her pen. This was new. Victor didn't usually talk about their arrangement ending. "Are you planning to end it?" "Not today. But nothing lasts forever, Evelyn. You're young. You'll outgrow this. Outgrow me. When that happens, I'd rather you leave because you have somewhere better to go, not because you have no choice." Something in her chest tightened. "That's unexpectedly decent of you." "Don't mistake pragmatism for decency. I'm investing in you because you're valuable, capable, and because I don't want you to waste that capability just because our contract expires." He finally looked up. "So, what do you want to study?" She thought about it. About the board meeting where she'd dismantled Ryan's deal. About the night she'd spent learning to read financial statements and market trends. About how much she'd enjoyed the intellectual challenge of it all. "Business strategy," she said. "I want to understand how deals work, how companies grow or fail, how to see opportunities other people miss." Victor smiled. "I'll make some calls. You'll start in the fall semester." And just like that, her future shifted again. Not toward marriage or happily ever after, or any of the endings she'd once imagined for herself. Toward something else. Something that looked like independence wrapped in temporary dependence. a bridge between who she'd been and who she might become. The classes started in September. Evelyn threw herself into them with the intensity of someone who'd been starving without realizing it. She read textbooks late into the night, debated strategy with classmates who had no idea who she was or what she did when she wasn't in school, and discovered she was actually good at this, not just competent, good. Her professors noticed. One of them, a woman named Dr. Marion Chen, who'd spent 20 years in private equity before transitioning to academia, pulled her aside after class one day. "You have a natural talent for this," Dr. Chen said. "Have you thought about what you want to do after graduation?" Evelyn hadn't. She'd been so focused on surviving the present that the future felt abstract, theoretical. "I'm not sure yet." "Well, when you figure it out, come talk to me. I have connections. I could help you find opportunities." Dr. Chen paused. "You're not like the other students. You're older, more focused, like you're trying to prove something." "Maybe I am." "Good. The best professionals I know are the ones who started out needing to prove they belonged. It gives you an edge the privileged kids never develop." After Dr. Chen left, Evelyn sat in the empty classroom thinking about edges and privilege and the different kinds of hunger that drove people. She'd started this journey hungry for revenge. Somewhere along the way, it had transformed into hunger for something else. Knowledge. Competence. The ability to stand on her own without anyone propping her up. When she got home that night, Victor was waiting in her apartment. He'd let himself in, he had keys, of course, and was reading something on his tablet with the focused intensity that meant he was working on something significant. "How was class?" he asked without looking up. "Good." "Doctor, Chen thinks I have talent." "Dr. Chen is right. I've been reading your papers. You're better than half the analysts I employ." He set down the tablet. "Which brings me to something I've been considering. I want to offer you a position." Evelyn froze. "A position doing what?" "Working for me, officially. Not as my companion, not as my mistress. As an actual employee in my acquisitions department. You'd have a real title, a real salary, separate from the contract, and real responsibilities. You'd report to me, at least initially, but you'd be building your own reputation, your own career." "Why?" "Because you're capable of more than warming my bed and looking good at events. You've proven that repeatedly, and because keeping you dependent on our personal arrangement is starting to feel like waste." He stood, walking to where she stood. "I'm not changing the contract. That stays in place until one of us decides otherwise. But I'm offering you a chance to be more than what that contract makes you." Evelyn's mind raced. This was what she'd wanted, wasn't it? Independence, a career, the ability to be something more than Victor's temporary distraction. But it was also complicated. Working for him while sleeping with him, while being contractually obligated to be available to him. The lines would blur in ways she couldn't predict. "I need to think about it," she said. "Take your time. The offer stands." He picked up his jacket. "I have a meeting. I'll see you Thursday for the museum gala." After he left, Evelyn stood in her apartment, her expensive, beautiful cage of an apartment, and tried to figure out what she wanted. The girl in the red dress had wanted to be loved. The woman she'd become wanted to be powerful. But the person she was still becoming, that person wanted something else, something that looked like respect and autonomy, and the knowledge that her value existed separate from any man's opinion of her. She called Dr. Chen the next day and asked for advice. They met for coffee, and Evelyn told her an edited version of the situation: relationship with a powerful man, complicated dynamics, job offer that would formalize the professional side of things. Dr. Chen listened without judgment. "What does your gut tell you?" "That it's an opportunity I'd be stupid to turn down, but also that it's a trap that could blow up in my face." "Both can be true." Dr. Chen stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "Here's what I know from 20 years in finance. Men in power make these offers to women they're involved with all the time. Sometimes it's genuine recognition of talent. Sometimes it's another form of control. The question is whether you can tell the difference and whether you're strong enough to walk away if it turns out to be the latter." "How do I know which it is?" "You test it. Take the job. Do the work. See if he lets you succeed on your own merits or if he undermines you every time you get too independent. If it's real, you build a career. If it's control, you gather evidence and leverage and plan your exit. She met Evelyn's eyes. But either way, you come out ahead. You either get what you want, or you learn something valuable about who you're dealing with. Evelyn took the job. She started 2 weeks later with an office on the 58th floor and a title that sounded impressive: Associate Director of Strategic Acquisitions. Her first project was analyzing a potential investment in a biotech startup. She spent 3 weeks on due diligence, interviewing founders, reviewing clinical trial data, building financial models that projected outcomes under different scenarios. When she presented her findings to Victor and his senior team, she recommended against the investment. Too much regulatory risk, timeline too uncertain, founders too inexperienced for the capital requirements they'd need. Victor accepted her recommendation without argument. The deal died. 2 months later, the biotech company failed to secure FDA approval and went bankrupt. Evelyn's reputation in the office shifted. She wasn't just Victor's girlfriend anymore. She was the analyst who'd saved the company millions by killing a bad deal. People started coming to her for opinions. Junior analysts asked if she'd review their work. Senior partners included her in strategy sessions. She was becoming someone who mattered in her own right. A year after signing the contract, Evelyn sat in a board meeting, not as Victor's companion, but as a presenter. She was recommending a major acquisition, and the board was pushing back. Hard. "The valuation is aggressive," one board member said. "How confident are you in the growth projections?" "Confident enough to stake my reputation on them," Evelyn said, "but not confident enough to recommend we move forward without contingencies. That's why I'm proposing a phased acquisition. We buy 40% now, with options to acquire the rest based on performance milestones. It caps our risk while giving us the upside if the projections hold." The board members exchanged glances. The gray-haired woman who'd questioned Ryan's deal a year ago nodded slowly. "That's actually smart. Victor, what do you think?" Victor, who'd been silent through the entire presentation, smiled. "I think Evelyn knows what she's talking about. I'm in favor." The deal was approved. 3 months later, the company hit every milestone. Victor exercised the options, and the full acquisition went through at a valuation that made the initial purchase look like a bargain. Evelyn's bonus that quarter was more than she'd made in 2 years at her old job. She took her father to dinner to celebrate. He was in remission now, his doctors cautiously optimistic about his long-term prognosis. He looked healthy, happy, proud of her in a way that made her chest ache. "I don't know how you did it," he said over dessert, "how you went from working at that restaurant to this. But watching you succeed, it's the greatest gift you could have given me." Evelyn smiled and didn't tell him the truth. Didn't tell him that his survival had been the first transaction in a chain that led here. Didn't tell him about contracts and arrangements and the moral compromises she'd made to get where she was. Some stories were better left untold. 18 months after the contract was signed, Victor called Evelyn into his office on a Tuesday afternoon. She went expecting another project, another deal to analyze. Instead, he handed her a document. "What's this?" she asked. "Contract amendment. Read it." She read. The amendment dissolved most of the original terms. The financial arrangements would continue, but the exclusivity clauses were gone. The expectations around availability, around physical intimacy, around being his companion, all removed. What remained was essentially an employment contract with very generous compensation. "I don't understand," she said. "You've outgrown the original arrangement. You're not my mistress anymore. You're my colleague, my partner in the professional sense. Keeping you bound by terms designed for a different relationship doesn't make sense." He leaned back in his chair. "You're free to see other people. Live your own life. The apartment is yours regardless. The salary continues. Your father's care continues. Nothing changes except you're no longer obligated to be available to me personally." Evelyn stared at him. "Why?" "Because I told you from the beginning that I don't like waste. And you being chained to me out of contractual obligation when you could be building a real life. That's waste." He picked up a pen, signed the amendment, and slid it across the desk. "Sign it. Move on. Be whoever you're going to be without me in the way." Her hand trembled as she picked up the pen. "What if I don't want to move on?" "Then don't. The amendment doesn't forbid a relationship. It just makes it optional instead of mandatory." His eyes held hers. "But Evelyn, we both know this was always temporary. You were never going to stay with me forever. You're 27 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. I'm not going to be the reason you waste it." She signed the amendment because he was right, because staying with him out of obligation or gratitude or fear would turn her into exactly what Claire had accused her of being, a kept woman with no identity beyond who kept her. But signing it hurt more than she'd expected. 2 months later, Evelyn met someone. His name was James. He worked in a completely different industry, and he knew nothing about her arrangement with Victor except that she'd once been involved with someone powerful, and it had ended amicably. He was kind, uncomplicated. He made her laugh in ways that had nothing to do with power games or strategic positioning. She dated him for 3 months before she realized it wasn't going to work. Not because he wasn't good enough, because she'd changed too much. She couldn't go back to wanting simple things. Couldn't pretend that normal relationship dynamics felt like anything other than playing house. She'd become someone who needed edges and challenges, and the constant test of proving she belonged in rooms where people underestimated her. She'd become, in many ways, exactly what Victor had made her. When she ended things with James, he was confused but gracious. "I think you're looking for something I can't give you," he said. "I hope you find it." "Me too," she said, and meant it. 3 years after signing the original contract, Evelyn was promoted to senior director. She had her own team now, her own projects, a reputation that existed entirely separate from Victor Cole. People in the industry knew her name. Recruiters called with offers. She'd built something real. Victor took her to dinner to celebrate. Not as lovers, they hadn't slept together since the contract amendment, but as something else. Friends seemed too simple. Colleagues seemed too distant. Whatever they were, it worked. "I'm proud of you," he said over wine that probably cost more than her first car. "You've exceeded every expectation I had. Even the ones where I was supposed to stay dependent and grateful? I never wanted that. I wanted you to have teeth. You have them now, very sharp ones." He raised his glass. "To Evelyn Harper, who walked into my office 3 years ago in a red dress and became someone I didn't see coming." She clinked her glass against his. "To Victor Cole, who gave me the tools to destroy him if I ever need to." "You already could. You just choose not to. That's power too." They finished dinner and walked out into the city night. At the curb, their cars waited, hers now, not his, going separate directions. "I'm leaving the company," Evelyn said before she lost her nerve. Victor didn't look surprised. "Where are you going?" "Dr. Chen is starting a private equity firm. She offered me a founding partner position. Smaller firm, more equity, more control over strategy. It's risky, but you're ready for risk." He smiled. "Good. Take it. Build something that's yours. And when you've built it, don't forget that this is where you learned how." "I could never forget. For better or worse, you made me who I am." "No. I gave you permission to become who you already were. There's a difference." He kissed her forehead, brotherly, affectionate, final. "Goodbye, Evelyn. Go be dangerous on your own terms." She got in her car and drove away from Victor Cole and everything he represented. The apartment? She'd kept it, but moved to a different one she'd purchased herself. The allowance? She'd stopped accepting it 6 months ago, living entirely on her salary. Her father's medical care. Victor still covered it. The one thing she'd let him continue because it had started this whole thing and felt right to let it end that way. 5 years after walking into Victor's office in a red dress, Evelyn stood in a boardroom pitching an acquisition to investors. Her firm, her deal, her reputation on the line. The investors were tough, skeptical, asking the kind of questions designed to expose weakness. She answered everyone with confidence born from being tested in fires hotter than this. When the meeting ended, the lead investor shook her hand. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Can't put my finger on who." Evelyn smiled. "I get that a lot." She didn't tell him that she reminded herself of someone too. A girl in a red dress who'd wanted to be loved and had learned instead to be powerful. Who'd made terrible choices that led to necessary transformations. Who'd sold herself to survive and bought herself back with compound interest. That night, she went to visit her father. He was gardening now, healthy and happy in the house she'd bought him with her first major bonus. He hugged her tight and told her about the tomatoes he was growing. "I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me," he said. "I know you've worked so hard, sacrificed so much. I hope it's been worth it." Evelyn looked at her father, alive, thriving, unaware of the price she'd paid for his survival, and thought about the question. Had it been worth it? She'd lost her innocence, her naivety, the simple faith that love was enough and good things happened to good people. She'd become harder, sharper, more calculating. She'd learned to use people the way they used her, to see relationships as transactions, to armor herself against vulnerability. But she'd also gained skills and knowledge and a steel core confidence that nothing could shake. She'd learned she could survive worse things than heartbreak. She'd discovered capabilities she'd never known she had. She'd become someone who couldn't be used anymore because she'd learned to use herself first. Yes, she said to her father, it's been worth it. Later, alone in her apartment, the one she owned in the building she'd chosen, filled with furniture she'd selected, Evelyn poured herself a glass of wine and stood at the window looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Ryan was living whatever life he'd rebuilt after his failure. She hadn't thought about him in months. He'd become irrelevant, a footnote in a story that had moved far beyond him. Somewhere else, Victor was building his empire, maybe with a new companion, maybe alone. They texted occasionally, had lunch every few months, maintained the kind of relationship that acknowledged their shared history without being defined by it. And here she was, Evelyn Harper. Not the girl who'd wanted to be loved, not the woman who'd sold herself for survival. Something else. Something that had been forged in the space between those two extremes. Someone who'd learned that power wasn't given, it was taken. That survival sometimes required becoming something you never thought you could be. That the price of transformation was everything you used to be, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that price was worth paying. She raised her glass to her reflection in the window, to the journey that had brought her here, to the girl in the red dress who died so this woman could be born, to every choice that had seemed impossible until she made it, to the understanding that there were no clean endings, no perfect resolutions, just the messy reality of becoming who you needed to be and learning to live with the cost. And to the hard-won knowledge that sometimes the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was walking away whole, successful, and utterly beyond reach of the people who'd tried to make you small. Evelyn drained her glass and turned away from the window. She had work in the morning, a deal to close, a future to build that belonged to no one but her. The girl in the red dress was gone. She'd been gone for years, but what had taken her place was something sharper, stronger, more dangerous than anyone, including Evelyn herself, had expected. And she was just getting started.